Hi, this is Dr. Culkin again, here to discuss Topic 7, the beginning of the era of liberal consensus, which covers the Depression and World War II. During the 1920s, many Americans became accustomed to a life of prosperity, but things changed drastically at the end of that decade. Over the 1920s, supply began to outstrip demand, meaning companies were making more goods than American consumers could or were willing to buy. Instead of slowing production or increasing workers' salaries so they could buy more, companies took out loans, with much of the credit ending up in the stock market, which soared in response. The stock market, however, crashed in October 1929. Although the crash alone did not cause the depression that followed, it soon began to influence the rest of the economy. Banks which suffered losses in the stock market could make fewer loans, meaning fewer people could buy products, leading companies to lay off workers, which caused more problems for the economy because, of course, laid off workers could not buy products. Remember, at this point, the banks were uninsured, so if your banks closed, you lost your money. By 1932, 25% of the population was unemployed. Herbert Hoover, the president as the Depression began, believed the economy would eventually right itself and stressed the importance of volunteer efforts instead of government intervention to ease suffering in the meantime. In 1932, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a Democrat, beat Hoover in the presidential election. After taking office, he immediately took steps to get the economy back on track. And this is a series of efforts collectively called the New Deal. His first efforts involved the banks. He closed weak ones and ordered government supervision for and aid to others. Other efforts included the Tennessee Valley Authority, the National Recovery Administration, the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, the Civilian Conservation Corps, and the Works Progress Administration. While these measures helped ease the immediate crisis, they did not end the Depression, and Americans grew discontented once again. In response to this, in part, in 1935, the government took new measures, creating a safety net for the first time with the Social Security Act, which provided old age pensions, or what we call Social Security, unemployment payments, and welfare payments. The New Deal was controversial on both sides of the political spectrum. Conservatives were horrified by the idea of the government expanding its power and providing any type of safety net and intervention into private enterprise, while others believed the New Deal could have gone much farther. It could have nationalized the banks, for instance. None of the legislation truly ended the Depression, although it did make many people's lives easier and made FDR a hero to many Americans. As the U.S. tried to recover economically, tension grew in Europe and Asia. Hitler invaded Poland in 1939 and quickly marched across much of the rest of the continent. The U.S. at first pledged neutrality, again, as they had before, but as Europe fell to Hitler, Americans grew concerned. The country's loyalty to England became clear, culminating in the Lend-Lease Act, through which the U.S. agreed to lend and lease goods and weapons to countries fighting against aggressors. Meanwhile, in Asia, Japan was aggressively expanding, while also signing a pact with Germany and Italy. After Japan invaded Indochina, the U.S. froze all Japanese assets in the U.S. In response, and after some failed negotiations, on December 7th, Japan bombed the U.S. Navy base in Pearl Harbor, which is in Hawaii. The next day, the U.S. declared war on Japan, and within days, Germany and France had declared war on the United States. So at this point, obviously, the U.S. is fully in World War II. During the war, many changes took place on the U.S. home front. American industry ramped up to full capacity in order to meet the demands of the war, which helped industrialists, factory workers, and farmers alike. It sort of helped the entire economy. As many men joined the military, new opportunities opened up for women, as well as African Americans and Mexican Americans, although these groups still face sexism and racism. There was a lot of demographic movement. For instance, many African Americans moved from the South up to the industrial North for work. Japanese Americans in 1932 were moved to concentration camps in response to racist fears about their loyalty to the country in a time of war. In May 1945, the Germans surrendered, but the war with Japan dragged on. Roosevelt had died in April of that year, and Truman had to make an incredibly difficult choice. There were three options for ending the war with Japan: negotiation, a massive invasion which would have likely led to hundreds of thousands of casualties, or the use of a new weapon, the atomic bomb. Truman made the decision to use the bomb, and the U.S. attacked Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. 3 days later, Nagasaki was also attacked. Japan